You're listening to Small Business, Big Stories, the Queensland Small Business Commissioners podcast with Dominique Lamb. There are more than 482,000 small businesses in Queensland and counting. These are their stories. I first met Julia when she was the Chief Entrepreneur of Queensland, but what you soon learn about Julia is that there is far more to her, not just the myriad of awards that she comes with, but also incredible experience building business in the bush and also connecting people. I've never met someone who is such an incredible networker and incredible connector. And the most exciting fact I think about Julia is that she currently has 67 free-range guinea pigs running around her property. How are you, Julia?
Hello, Dominique. I'm so well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, I'm very excited for this conversation.
Can you tell me about your business and its origin? You know, how did it start? What drove you into small business land?
So I have as my core business that I say is my day job is my consulting business, Engage and Create Consulting. And it started in December 2012 out of necessity, which will be the case for most regional businesses potentially who might be listening, and particularly our small businesses, sole traders, or maybe those that have now moved into a company structure like I did. And it was, I started Engage and Create because I had been working in Gundawindi, my hometown. I didn't want to work there anymore. It was a drought though, and so other businesses around town weren't employing people, and so I needed to find myself a job, and so really starting a business at that stage was how I was able to do it. I'm incredibly blessed, and I've worked incredibly hard to still have that consulting business, you know, almost 14 years later. And that has been my bread and butter over that time. Over that time, I've also started other businesses, bought and sold and created a few different elements in my hometown of Gundawindi. So Engage and Create Consulting runs out of the Gundawindi Business Hub, which is a co-working office space that my husband and I and two other friends created at the end of 2014 because we needed an office in town, but we didn't need a massive big space. And so we bought an old accounting building, renovated it and did it up, and we've had 9 tenants in the Gundawindi Business Hub ever since. We've been full pretty much the whole time. So I'm probably a person who's quite good at working out what's a problem that I have, how many other people are likely to have that problem, and how can we commercialise that and turn that into an opportunity where that solves a problem for me, also creates value for other people.
Absolutely. I mean, we spend all of our weeks on the road and sort of travel everywhere from, you know, Thargomindah to Normanton and sort of beyond again. And the opportunity in the bush is absolutely incredible. And what was your first business in the bush?
So my first business in the bush is an interesting one. I worked for an environmental not-for-profit organisation that got all of their funding from state and federal government, and what we realised was that was not super sustainable. And so me and one other guy started what would become the consulting arm of that not-for-profit. And so that really was the first way in which I was part of a business. I'd been on boards of other not-for-profits, so I'd had that kind of governance experience and how to manage and do the strategic work around business. But probably the first part was building this consulting arm within a not-for-profit, which was super successful.
I thought you were going to say something far more interesting about when you were a kid and selling, I don't know, lemonade in a lemonade stand or something. I'm sure there's some story in there.
Our farm was literally had the Carnarvon Highway as our driveway. So, you know, it would selling lemonade there probably wouldn't have worked. I remember my brother trying to convince me that we should make bird seed and sell it at the end of the road. I never thought that was a great idea. But I grew up in a family, you know, I think one of the things that you and I agree on is often innovation in the bush and in regional areas comes from desperation, right? And so, you know, I grew up in a family where the farm had years of drought and challenges and all of the things. And Mum and Dad looked at different ways to be able to do things. So we had a farm stay. We did a whole range of different things in terms of the moving out of sheep and into goats and all sorts of stuff. So from as a family, we were always looking for ways in which we could be growing opportunities for income, basically.
So if I'm a business in the bush and I've got the tyranny of distance. So my roads, might not be amazing. I'm paying, or I'm going to pay huge amounts of money in freight. Energy might not be as reliable as what I would like. I've got significant heat. I might not be able to access water. Where do you start as a business owner? How do you pick what you're going to do in a town that might not have a lot going on?
So I think it's really not that different to if I was in downtown Brisbane and I needed to think of, I don't like where I am and I want to do something else. What's for me, it was what was the skill set I had. I was working for a not-for-profit organisation, and for multiple reasons, I didn't want to work there anymore. I wanted to stay living in Gundawindi. It was the middle of a drought. I talked to other businesses to see if they had any jobs going, and they didn't. Maybe they did and they just didn't want to give them to me. I don't know. But anyway, so it was really out of necessity that my business started, and I am no different to lots of people in the region. So I needed to start a business because I needed to create myself a job. And I had a set of skills, and I knew I could run workshops and I could manage projects and all of the things. I was lucky I had some skill set around running a business. But think about it, people finish an apprenticeship as a Sparky and start their own business. They're very good at the technical thing that they do. They're a great hairdresser, they're a great builder, they're a great construction engineer, whatever it might be. So they've got the technical skill to know that they can do the things. It's those business skills that we need to make sure we wrap around ourselves pretty quickly. Good accountant or bookkeeper or social media person these days, whatever that looks like.
You came from a family that was entrepreneurial, out of necessity or otherwise. How do we get that information to people in areas where internet connectivity might be a problem?
I think that there's some really important pieces in this. So I will always say there's actually not that much. There's not many differences for small business owners between the city and the country, right? Access to workforce, labour issues, input costs increasing, cost of energy, as you mentioned, all of the things. They're actually not that different. How we handle that, that's where the complexity happens in the regions. But I think what we start to see and what we're all getting better at is realising that there is information out there, right? And so there's some of the research that's been done around regional entrepreneurs, and I'm going to say it's going to be fairly similar for small business as well, is that it can take 2 years longer and up to $200,000 more for a regional entrepreneur to get to the starting line. Now, that's maybe because we don't have an innovation hub, or there's not a precinct, or we don't have a, some sort of manufacturing hub on our doorstep. And so we're coming from an industry that we know really well, like ag potentially, and moving into another industry that is not available to us in our community, like manufacturing or whatever it might be. And so we've got to build all of those networks. I think what women do well is build networks quickly, and we also ask for help more often sometimes than the fellas. So my hope as a result of this conversation is that small businesses anywhere in Queensland, but particularly in the regions, know that there is help available to them that will be place-based and appropriate. And I think that's some of the work that we're starting to be able to see is, yes, we might have similar challenges, but how that gets dealt with in a Gundawindi as opposed to a Longreach, going to be slightly different. And how do we make sure that what those businesses and how they can access that can be really relevant. And I think for some of that, it is around, making sure that we have really good, successful businesses in the regions that can support other regions. So as you know, I have a consulting business. I run, I facilitate a lot. We do a lot of strategy. We do a whole lot of stuff. But I don't really do it down here in Brisbane because I figure there's a whole lot of other consultants running around down here and that's their jam. But I do it all over regional Australia. But I also know all of the other Julias around the place. So if I can't do something, don't want to do something, am not the best person for it, I will send them to a Sonia Comiskey in Emerald or a Tara Diversey in Cairns or a Claire MacArthur at Rocky because I know the quality of their work. I know that they're going to represent well and I know that they're really super smart and are going to do a great job. And I think that broader network and connection is something that as regional businesses we are good at doing. You mentioned before about it's not always about making the most money and things, and I think sometimes that gets lost in translation with people. They see that as we're not ambitious or we're not driven. 100% ambitious, 100% driven, want to be successful, want to be all of the things, but I actually don't need 10 people in my team or 50 people in my team to be able to do that. And I don't want to grow to that scale, partly because I know I'm not going to be able to find enough people or provide them with a home once they move to the town. A couple of other challenges. But I think it is about what's that definition of success, right? And growth for the sake of it is actually cancer. Growth with no outcome is a tumour, right? And so I've done the growing and shrinking and lots of staff and no staff and all of the rest of it, but I've had to work out what success looks like for me in the last nearly 14 years in small business.
So how did you determine what success looks like for you?
So for me, it was around what's the impact that we want to be able to offer. And so the impact for me is a couple of different ways. So I have over the years employed 6 or 7 women in Gundawindi and around who either moved to the region, so married into the region and came with a set of skills that was kind of not really needed or understood in Gundawindi when they first arrived. But yes, you're a journo for Channel 7. You're probably going to be able to write grants. You can understand a question and respond to an answer. You can build a strategy around what people need. So we can take those skills and transfer them and build them and connect you and do all of the great things. And so for me, that's awesome. They've gone off to do a whole lot of other things and they've taken that skill set and confidence with and the networks of the businesses that we work with. So for me, that's one of the impacts. The other is that I'm financially viable, that I can, whilst I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, I also grew up in a family where sometimes, mum probably scanned the key card and hoped that it wouldn't decline. So for me, part of my success is that I can tap a key card and know that there'll be money in that account to cover it. And I think that's a genuine level of success for people. And that I can feel that I've genuinely made a difference, that I can see organisations that are better set up, that are more profitable, that have better staff dynamics as a result of the work that we've done.
And what would you say was the hardest time in your sort of business life? And, how did that play out?
So when I finished my employment at the end of 2012, so I started my consulting business in December 2012, I basically sent an email to my network saying, I'm a gun for hire. I'll work out what I actually am going to do, but if anybody needs a hand with anything, please let me know. Happy to do anything. And genuinely, the network was amazing. So from the beginning, I had enough work. I always had a good pipeline of activity. I've gotten better at strategically working out what of that I should do and all of the rest of it, but I had a lot going on. In 2017, I got diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 38, and pretty much within 3 or 4 days, I had to down tools, travel to Toowoomba for operation, so about 2.5 hour drive from home, be there for chemo, be there for radiation. And so there was a period of 6 or 7 months nearly where my business, there was me and a support person, an admin officer, but basically it was me. And for 6 or 7 months, it was down tools and just, get through this. So that was the hardest time. What it made me realise was I had created a job for myself, not a business. When I was not there, there was no money, there was no income. So it was great until it was not great. But I had clients who had been working with me for a few years before that say, how much money did we pay you last year to help us with stuff? Because why don't we just give you that money now and then you'll work with us? So I had people like prepaying for work because they knew I had no income. I farmed work out to other small consultants who could then go and run the workshops or do the things. And they gave me, like a finder's fee almost that. And so the network just wrapped their arms around me and helped me get through. And then, let's just get through that 6 or 7 months and then look at, okay, well, what do I need to have? And if this business is going to be successful, it needs to be able to do things whether I'm in it or not. And we then went down the path of employing more people and doing some training and working out how to extract me from the business a little bit more and build a skill set of people that could take on the work.
What are your sort of top tips for a small business anywhere? Like, what do you think that, is essential for all of them?
Yeah.
Whenever they're operating or at whatever stage.
So I think one is get clear on what is it that you actually want to do and just do that really well. Now, that seems really, really simple, right? But if you are doing something and it is working for you, it does not need to be whiz-bangy, it does not need to be flashy, it does not need to be any of the things. If you do it and you do it really well and that is working for you, that's actually fine. I think sometimes we think, oh no, it should be harder or it should be this or, I'm only selling tyres or whatever. Who cares? Everybody needs a tyre. Keep doing it. So I think that is actually one part. We don't all need to be the flashy things that are going on. We just need to do stuff that we love and do it really well, because at the end of the day, we are all actually problem solvers and we are providing solutions to people through the product or service that our business is providing. And I think probably the advantage that we have in the regions and in our smaller communities is we are closer to our customer, So we don't just see them when they come in the front door to our business. We also see them at the shops and we also see them at the kids' pickup and we also see them at sport on the weekend and we also see them because there's not that many of us often and we all run into each other all of the time. So the ability for us to really build genuine connection with our clients and make them really sticky and not want to go anywhere else is much higher. We have a much higher opportunity to do that. And so for me, if we're talking about advice for small businesses, it's do what you do and do it well. Determine what your definition of success is, but money's got to be part of that. We can't do this just for the love.
Fluffy clouds.
Yeah. It's not just for the love. We actually do want to make sure that you can have something. And so to that point, we talk about. Often in the regions we talk about succession planning and we only think about it from a farming perspective, how does agricultural land get transferred between generations? Succession planning happens in small business all of the time. And so do you have a saleable business? What does that look like long term? What do you need to do at the end? Do you want to retire and it's going to shut down? They're the questions that the sooner we can have them, the better position we are to know that we're not creating a lot of stress for ourselves at the age of 50 or 55 or 60 where we realise, oh my gosh, we need another 20 years to get to some of these financial goals that we might have. So the financial literacy piece and understanding our finances and what we need is the other underpinning thing. And for a lot of us who have started small business, that is not our background. That's always our blind spot, and it's often something that we maybe we admit we don't know, but we then don't really know how to solve. And so I think a lot of the support and the information that we can get through a range of channels, but including yours, is really important.
Your business has been very successful in terms of consultancy and across multiple industries and across, locations. What would be your advice for someone who wants to start a consultancy business?
I think my advice would be, my first piece of advice would be do it. If you have a skill set that you think will add value to other businesses or organisations in your region, do it. But talk to them, talk to people about it. Don't pop up overnight and be a surprise. I think sometimes I've seen businesses where they think they've got to kind of do this massive big launch like we might if we were somewhere else. But I just work on the fact of, there doesn't need to be secrets. The more we talk about things, people genuinely want to support. So for anybody who is wanting to start a consulting business, regardless of where you are, but particularly in the regions, use your networks. Tell people what are the problems you want to solve. It'd be great for me to come in and do some work in your business if what you're looking for is X, Y, and Z. I can help you with these problems. I can help solve that. I can help make sure your team's really confident and able to do X, Y, and Z for you. That changes it. So what's the solutions you can bring? What are the problems you can solve? Use the language that's really comfortable for you. Don't say that you can do everything. Again, I don't want to go to a doctor. We go to a GP and then we need specialists for particular things. I am from a consultant perspective, I'm a GP, but I also know the specialists I would send people to. So work out, what is it that you want to do in your consulting business.
Julia, what's your business mantra?
So my business mantra is anything that we do within Engage and Create has to provide or has to contribute to viable and vibrant communities. So whether that's working with an individual business or working with an industry group or not-for-profit, which we do a lot around, how are we helping them with their viability, building, maintaining whatever that looks like, and this vibrancy piece. So how are we making sure that they have a workforce that's engaged and well-skilled and trained and things like that? Because from a regional community perspective, we need viable and vibrant communities to remain sustainable and for everybody to really be able to contribute more. We can only do that from a place of having viability and vibrancy in the people.
Yeah, great. I've learned so many new things about you today, but tell me about the connection table.
Oh, yes. So I'm a co-founder of the Connection Table with my good friend Joe Palmer, who's in regional New South Wales. And really, in some ways, it came from my role of being Chief Entrepreneur, where I ended up in some fairly impressive decision-making around decision-making tables, and I was the only person that was there regionally. And I was there in my role as Chief Entrepreneur, not as a regional person. And that concerns me greatly. I think we don't make good decisions if we don't have diversity around the table. And we've often talked about that from a gender perspective and a cultural perspective. I think regional diversity is the other really important element to what we need to start talking about. And so the Connection Table is a platform that Joe and I have started to really bring regional leaders together across sectors to kind of raise the level and the number of regional people who are talking about and making decisions about what's happening across all of Australia.
Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all of your incredible wisdom with our listeners. If you're interested and you want to learn more about the Connection Table, get in touch with Julia. She's pretty easy to find on LinkedIn and other places. And honestly, if you haven't met her, I'd be very surprised. I do genuinely feel like you possibly know everybody in Queensland.
Maybe. We're a good lot, though.
You are a good lot. Absolutely. Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Stories. I hope today's discussion finds the people who need it. And for more inspiration on how to transform your small business, keep tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favourite platform. And if you have a business question for myself or my guests, we'd love to hear from you. Just follow the link in our show notes and send us an email. I'm Dominique Lamb, the Queensland Small Business Commissioner. Until next time.